Alright, I think we're recording here. Just got this tranny mocked up, guys. This block might have a little tiny up angle to it, but you can see that I've just grabbed the axle and popped it into the transmission. And I'm just holding this up here. We've got some options for moving stuff around, and I know from the off-road cars, race them over the years, these CVs can be taken apart if we wanted to get a little more angle, and they can be ground open a little bit. But sticking with a stock one would be ideal, because if you had one fail, you're just running into the parts store to buy a Geo axle. There's different length axles. There's a long one and a short one. I have one here. Let me put a glove on, I don't want to get greasy. The center line of the crankshaft is right here. The head's not on here. So if it had a second axle, it would travel through here. On this particular setup, we'll actually just weld the differential up the spider gear so they don't turn, or posi it, as you're probably more familiar with. And it'll just drive that in, and then we'll take this portion of the axle, the boot off of it, and remove the axle from the other side. And we'd actually just plug it in for to stop it from leaking oil. May have to make a bracket off the back bolt here that stops it from trying to walk out. But I'm not 100% sure. Alright, there goes that glove. Let's see. That would be your lift fan, your prop. You can see the prop hub, we're going to get a little higher than the center of the crankshaft. And let's see what I've got for axles here. And I believe this is the long one. And we're going to take that down. You can start to see the extra length there. I'm not sure, the extra length gives us a little more height, I believe, the geometry, that's how that works. But we're shoving the engine farther forward. So depending on how much space we need, we can lower the engine down by using the longer axle and pushing the motor forward. There's some CG adjustments to be made, but technically we had to drive. Technically the CG is going to be pushed way forward. We want to actually move everything back, is my guess, because normally you'd have the propeller, the crankshaft, flywheel and stuff all up here, and now we're going to move all that stuff back to here, so we're moving it away. And I know the CG on the craft is up above the fan. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. We'll have to work out the CG on it, and but I'm not worried about it. We have lots of room to do it. And that's pretty much that. If you want to see it, I do have a head here. Then we need the thermostat housing worked that way. And that's the head. This is the intake manifold side. That's your intake manifold. It's off a Geo Tracker, it's all aluminum, this one's steel. The throttle plate goes on right here, the throttle body, and the turbocharger would sit over here. We have a couple of propane mixers through the turbo exhaust. The exhaust on it will just be a little tiny short pipe. The turbos won't make any noise. Probably won't even install a muffler. And then basically the hose will come around the valve cover here, or a piece of pipe will bend up, and it'll clamp on the outside of that throttle body, just like the regular air cleaners or whatnot would. And you'll open this throttle plate right here, and that'll control the vacuum on the mixers. And that's it. We don't have to do any pop-off valves or anything since we're doing a draw through. There's no fuel adjustment, there's no nothing. The mixers are altitude adjusting, so if you go to Colorado, you're fine. If it was going into an airplane, you wouldn't make any adjustments at all. It's all automatic. And that's pretty much it. To give you an idea, the oil pan will drop down to about here, and probably down around the bottom of the transmission. I actually can't see what you're seeing, so let me turn the camera around here, take a peek. Yeah, there's so much glare on there, it's hard to see. There we go. So, yeah, so we're from there through here, out. To about right there. So this is your lift fan bay, duct, and your prop, and we're going to offset the engine to one side of the craft a smidge, so your lift fan's not going to be in the middle of the machine. That's just simply because the transmission is not in the output that's on the crankshaft is off by oh, let me grab a tape measure. I'd say about 6 inches. And we can move the prop over and probably grab 3 or 4 inches of that. And then we're going to be 1.5 inches off anyhow, because they want the propeller 1.5 inches off center anyhow if we can pick up 3 or 4. So we can probably put the propeller exactly where it needs to be. The engine weight will set just 6 inches or 3 inches or something to the it's a very good question. Maybe we can center all this. Maybe when this is all done, it actually sits in the right spot. I haven't really thought it through. But if we have to move over 1 inch or 2 to get off center line, and then the fan over here is 6 inches off, and we can move that a little bit. We get so close that it won't even matter. The forward and back CG will be the only thing, and we'll just have to build in the perfect CG once it's yeah, we'll just adjust the CG as we go. What else? Then we just need to pick a position for the radiator to go in, and I'm thinking that we'll put the radiator in the I really always liked the radiator fan on Jeff Ross's, where he had it mounted behind the fan, and he was drawing the air through, so he's on the low pressure pushing it through. He never had any problems with heat, and it gives us good access. The Prospector and the Explorer had them in the well, Explorer for the most part had the Volkswagen engine on it, but the Prospector had the lift fan in the or the radiator in the lift fan. Let me back that out a smidge. You know what, maybe the camera's just not back far enough to get the shot. There we go. We always had an access issue to the radiator to work on it. I know several times I couldn't mess with the radiator. In fact, one time I burnt the motor up in the Prospector out off Jetty Island because I didn't have good access to the radiator, and I got tricked. I thought it was full of water and it wasn't. At any rate, putting the radiator out here down underneath the prop or something would be ideal, and that would do something like a very small radiator. I've got one on the shelf here set there, but imagine, you know, something like that. As another reference point as we're starting to put this all together. This center of this crankshaft is approximately 36 inches off the ground on my engine stand, and that's 40 inches right there, 40. And say if we're swinging a 75-inch propeller, 35 and 35, 70, 42. So that's about, depending on what we end up with for a fan or a propeller, this will, this height is probably within a couple of inches. And so the assumption is, and let me tip it down here now. The assumption is that's off the deck of the boat, the top deck, or the. So would this be, I know we're going to alter the plans a little bit for that Prospector. Let's think of it as a vanguard where they come up to an upper, to the deck, and the deck height is just above the skirt attachment point around the machine. Because for instance, what I want to do is I want to build like an airboat style mount for this. So I'm going to come off with a piece of angle here. Actually, you know what? I take that back. We're going to build an airboat style mount here that spreads the load out across the whole back of the machine. And we're going to come up and grab the factory motor mounts for the engine and transmission because we know they already work. And the back of the machine has a motor mount that bolts on right there. I might even have one laying here. Let's see. Let me see. Didn't plan on jumping in depth on this. Actually, in the middle of cleaning the shop up, I stopped to do this video to take a break. At any rate, we've got a motor mount that comes back here that bolts on here. It's aluminum. It's got a steel round pipe that's got a piece of rubber in the middle of it. And it's got a bolt that goes through it on the factory car, real small. Sits in there. They call it the rear transmission mount because this would be the firewall of the car, or and this is a car transmission, or this would be the passenger side of the. Let me take the camera back out. Maybe come in here a little closer for this. Dun, dun, dun. Alright, okay, so I'm watching everything in reverse from what you're seeing. So I got this little motor mount section here. Off the front corner, I'm going to bring the camera around here. Off the front corner here, find this on, there we go. Off the front corner here, there's a mount that comes up, hangs out about here. Same style mount as the back, they just drag it out here. And it's got a bolt that goes through it this way, so it crosses through the block. I'm not sure what we're going to call it from. I guess it goes from the firewall to the front, that rubber mount, and it's isolated in a rubber boot. The one in the back here that I was just showing you, it goes across this way, so these two go in opposite, they go 90 to each other. And then there's another mount here. You'll have to excuse me as I play with this. And it bolts across the front of the transmission, and it comes out and bolts up under the fender of the car. And there's a little cover here that's missing, and it bolts up here, same style of mount. And for the life of me, I can't remember which way the mount goes. At any rate, it's the same style again, and that's your 3 mounts, and they work beautifully. We'll use the same thing. I probably already have them all. We're gonna buy donor cars anyhow, so they'll be on there. And that's why it's so important here. And ultimately, right now, it looks like if you could find a 90 to 94 Suzuki Swift 16 valve single overhead cam motor, it'd be a non-GTI car, because they have a GTI car, but it has a dual overhead cam, and we want a single overhead cam. So this has 1 cam, and then it has I hate these cameras. I just never zoom back far enough. So with the car, you're going to get the steel intake manifold and throttle body. It's lighter than the aluminum one, and we'll just pull the injectors out of it. And I built 2 of these last year, 2 years ago, for the Prospector, and threw them away because I decided to go a different route. But all of the vent holes and everything on them, it's all steel, so it just welds up with the wire feed really quick, and then it can be just repainted. But we're dealing with a single cam here that has 16 valves. I just put a bunch of lobes on it instead of running an actual twin cam. And yeah, so the 90 to 94 Suzuki Swift single overhead cam 16 valve, and the valve covers say 16 valve on them. It's how you know if they look like this, in fact. Now see, I take that back. On the track, on this one, this is out of a late model Geo, and it has coil-over plug on it, and this one doesn't say 16 valve, but it does look like this. Most of the time they say 16 valve across here. It could be that they say 16 valve on the Suzuki's, and I just can't remember. But at any rate, we don't want an 8 valve unit, and I'm going to show you an 8 valve too, so you know. And an 8 valve looks like this. And it can also be steel. This one just happens to be aluminum. And when it's steel, it's stamped and there's just little rounder corners. This one's cast. We don't want this right here. It's got to have that dish in it, but the other one I just showed you. And this takes the spark plugs on the side of the motor. It's conventional. And this motor's a Hemi, so it puts the plugs down the center, and the plugs go between the valves, all 4 valves. So this is a hemispherical motor. It's also one of the reasons it produces such good power. The difference between the 8 valve and the 16 valve, in all seriousness though, we could have easily went with the 8 valves. It was the turbo manifold that got us off on this direction. They just don't make a turbocharged manifold for an 8 valve, which is silly because it's probably the most turbocharged motor. I just don't want to custom build them, because all of them in the past I've always built. On the street they were okay, but it seemed like every few months you have to re-weld them and they crack and whatnot. And you build them out of Schedule 80 water pipe is generally the way we go. This will just be a cast iron or cast steel manifold, and it's nice and thick and it shouldn't crack. And if it does, eBay has them for like 140 bucks, and we can take them down and ceramic coat them so they don't rust all over. And I don't know, I've been setting everything up for a T28 turbocharger, and now that we've decided to go to that cast steel manifold instead of the stainless manifold that the Chinese guy offers, it actually might be a T3 turbo, and if it is, I'm going to look at doing some upsizing on the impellers when we order it, because I think we're going to get those from Low Bucket, and we're going to make the turbos not come on until like 4,500 RPMs or so. So you get to use the first, 85, 90 horsepower. Well, I won't even say that, because you're at 4,500, you're going to come into probably like 70, 80 horsepower. And then when you lean in over, like, say 4,500, that'll be enough air exhaust moving across the compressor blades and the turbo that you'll start to get your full, like, work it out. It looks like about 10 psi of boost, and that'll get you up flying, get the inertia of the craft moving, and then you can back down underneath the turbo and drop the exhaust gas temperatures down, and drop the fuel consumption way down. That would be the ultimate setup. And Low Bucket, he sets up all his rigs so they drive around on the street as daily commuters, and there's no boost at all. And then I think he's got them set up around 3,500. So when you put your foot into it, you're virtually come into the RPM and double the horsepower. I'm not going to get too much into that because we'll go over it, and I'm taking care of the motor. So if you have a question on it, email me. What else? So the clutch kit in here, we'll have the option for reverse, and kind of see the angle thing we're dealing with here on the prop. Intake manifolds. We're looking at the engine. It's only going to be about 24 inches wide. That's like on both sides, from the other side of the turbo to the other side, to the outside of the turbo to the outside of the intake. We're looking at with the cover on the transmission. I'm going to include the lift fan and stuff in here. It looks to me like the lift fan would be inside 36 inches. So we're probably looking at a duct that puts the outside of this transmission around 33 inches out. And then with the hub on here, so I'll just say the axle nut there. And after that, we're looking at about 50 maybe 48 inches from the center of the lift fan duct to right around where the axle nut is, or the outside of the prop. And then for the life of me, I just dismantled a couple cars for parts, but I've still got them rolling, so I didn't take any of the assembly off of them. And we just have to decide if we want to use early or late model hubs to hold the prop shaft out here. And I think we're going to go with the early style ones, because you can, without a special toolkit, I can change well, we'll call it the prop bearing, but the wheel bearings virtually with a punch and a hammer, in a bind within a slide hammer with no problem at all. And the late model one, truly the hub needs to be pressed. I have a kit that does it on the car, but the toolkit weighs a couple hundred pounds. You're not bringing it with you. And it's a much bigger bearing, but the overall is they use one bearing on the late model car, and then what they do is they put two smaller bearings in, and they spread them apart with a spacer between them. And you know what, I probably have them here on the shelf. Of course I do. I don't see where I've got a late model one setting, but you've got two bearings like this would be on probably about that distance too, or they just do a bearing that's actually that big. But these are small enough to where you can slide hammer the hub off of it, and you can just reach through here with a punch and punch this one out this way, and then reach through and punch this one out, and then you can tap them back in with a hammer, and when you put the axle assembly down and put the nut on it, you can pull them back together. I don't expect any in-flight failures, so I'm not too worried about it. These bearings are already stainless steel. They're sealed. They're not factory Geo ones. Buy aftermarket ones because the factory ones are all open face, and at some point they spit the grease out centrifugally and they burn themselves up. And I'm sure Geo and Suzuki do that to sell parts. So I think we'd be in real good with these. I need to pop one of them apart. I'm gonna just have to destroy one of them or find an old one laying around here. I can't remember if these are tapered or just roller bearing. Because if they're just roller bearing, we're gonna put the load on the front of a pushing the machine at the same time we're spinning it, and I'm not sure that maybe I might have to order up another bearing that's the same size that has tapered roller bearings on it, or ball bearings. But I'll figure that part of it out because, like I said, I'm not 100% sure what's here. The car, it's not a huge factor, and these last forever in the car, but there's not a lot of side load. And this is all side load with the propeller. We'll have to work on that. These probably would work just fine, but it's probably the same price to buy bearings that can be loaded from the side as well as in rotation. But that's something that I'll get worked out. And yeah. Oh, and then down here, because we're designing some linkage, this is the shifter right here. So that can be brought out and brought through U-joints and into the hull if you want to put just like a factory style shifter. Or for Volkswagen dune buggies, if you look up sand rails and look up a mid-engine shifter, they show you how to do it with two different cables, and then you can shift it and mount it wherever you want and use marine cables inside. Just to start with, all I want to do is have the option to pull up on the beach or be here working on it at my house. And before I start it up, I just want to be able to walk out and then just shift it into neutral and fire it up, and then I can stand back here without at least the thrust prop running. The lift fan runs, but I'm not worried about that. And then if you wanted for trailering, you technically could, if you wanted to back away from a dock or whatnot, you could technically walk around the side of the boat and lock it into, just turn it here and put it into reverse and back yourself out, and then come back and shift it into your forward gear. We're probably going to use 5th gear, but it'll be 4th or 5th. And that's it though. So it's just turn back and forth and in and out. Just imagine how you're shifting, and you shift and you go from like 1st to 2nd. That's 1st, well, it's actually backwards. That's so completely backwards. And anyhow, when you're inside the car and you're moving the shifter left and right, you're just rotating this left and right, and then when you push it forward, it actually pushes it in. When you pull it back, it pulls it out. So it would be, no, fuck, I don't know what it would be. Anyhow, you get it. And 5th gear's way over there. I don't even have any gears in here, so there's no shift fork or anything. The tranning's empty. I just left the ring and pinion in there so I can put the axle in and not have it fall out on me. And then as far as these donor cars that we buy, if we can take them for a quick test drive before we disassemble them. If it's got bad second gear, I don't know if it's got bad synchros in any of the gears, we don't really care unless we're going to have to do unless we decide to do in-flight shifting, which will be way down the road, maybe a couple seasons. They got bad synchros, and as long as it doesn't have a chipped gear and jumping out of gear, we're not going to use the synchros. We're just going to leave it in gear, and we're going to shift it when it's shut off, and you don't need synchros for that. So we can virtually throw junk trannies on them to start with, and then we figure out what we're going to do if we need anything. We can rebuild them, and I'll stuff my synchro kits in them. We won't use those Chinese ones everybody's using. And the clutch arm is up here, and it's actually over here, moves back and forth. And there's actually a clutch cable that actually comes out here and goes into the firewall on the car. We just switched that to a marine cable, and that can go anywhere you want, but the factory pole is right here. So I got a marine cable over there, but I'm not going to grab it. So that can, the clutch part's easy. And I'm thinking we'll hook to this clutch cable at some particular point, this arm here. And when you pull on the arm, we're going to have it reach up and with another cable and come up and grab up at the, God dang the camera again. We're going to have it, when you push the clutch in, we're going to have it pull the throttle back because you're going to disengage your horsepower load off your thrust prop. So you're going to go from, say, 70, 80 horsepower or more down to 10 or 12 horsepower on the lift fan. So the engine is going to want to rev way up because you took the load off when you disengage the clutch. So what we'll do is like when you push the clutch in or pull it in or however that works, it'll pull the throttle back to a set number that we know loads it keeps the throttle plate open to the horsepower rating we need to keep that lift fan going. So that way you can be flying across the bay and shift the thing into neutral, and when you shift it, the throttle, instead of it zinging through the roof and hitting the rev limiter that technically we're not going to use because we're not using a computer, instead of it zinging the motor up to 20,000 RPM, it'll pull the throttle down, and then you'll shift into reverse however we set that up, or just let the propeller freewheel in neutral, and that's a brake too because that's just now a disc that's dragging. And when you've got a 75-inch disc back here dragging, it'll be like slamming on a brake pedal when it goes to neutral and freewheels, because now to turn it, it's got to absorb all your forward energy. You'll be surprised. When I had my Piper Cub replica, we put a clutch on the front of the Hearth motor on it, and you could descend, instead of your normal 500 foot per minute coming in on final, I put that thing in there and just virtually just come straight down and then power up and land, get over the top of a tree and come straight down. It's amazing. So it'll be a hell of a brake on its own right there. But when you shift it into neutral, that'll pull the throttle down, and then when you shift and then disengage the clutch, it'll bring the power back in, and there'll be no clutch slippage or anything because you'll be locked in. And we know the clutches work absolutely fine on that because on my Explorer I had that Volkswagen bell housing on mine with the clutch, and from the day we installed it we never used it. When I took it apart a couple seasons later, the clutch disc had never even moved, so the propeller, it's not like a car where you can spin a tire or something and make the clutch jump or chatter or something. The propeller's too smooth for that. So we'll be able to use just, I think, the very smallest stock Geo clutch kit in it. I don't think we'll need any stage 3s or originally. Originally I thought we'd use these stage 3 clutches because they've got a 6-pack of springs in them, and when they hit, they just boom, they're just locked up. But I think a absolutely stock little tiny clutch and this on the small flywheel and everything will work just fine. It's totally not like a car. It's completely different. Everything that you need in a car is virtually reversed from a propeller, it appears. All right, I'm going to send this block down. I think Monday I'm going to go down and bore this block out and grind the valves on that head, and start getting some parts ready to go here. Just trying to think what else for an update. I think that pretty much updates where I'm at. I'm just starting to just order parts and stuff, and I don't want to order too many things that we don't use. And I'm more interested in finding out about these Chinese exhaust manifolds that are cast steel to make sure that I don't end up with a turbocharger that's brand new that I can't return that bolts onto it. Because we're going to probably get $500 a piece in the turbochargers on the cheap side. Yep, that's where I'm at, guys. Can't think of anything else. So for how do you turn the camera off? I don't know.